Welcome to the You Need More Money podcast. I'm your host, Matt Manero, where I come to you every week from my studio in Dallas, Texas. It has been a run of powerful women on the You Need More Money podcast. My guest today is my third powerful woman that I've had on. We did a series of extremely powerful women in business, and we enjoyed Bethany Williams in the first. We enjoyed Gloria Mayfield Banks. And today I invite Lisa Copeland to the show. Lisa, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize you were in Dallas. I'm in Austin.
Yes, I know that. Yeah, we're here in Dallas. My finance company is out of Dallas, and we've quarantined a studio in the back where we turned into our little podcast studio. And it's really we shoot everything out of this. We do a daily finance show for our equipment finance business. We finance heavy industrial equipment, big rigs, bulldozers, tow trucks. And we shoot a daily live show at noon called the CFF Truck Financing Show out of this studio.
You know something? It's hilarious. My new client is Penske Truck Leasing, and I'm going to Chicago next week to keynote their conference.
Wow, tremendous! I mean,
I may have to send you some more money.
I love it. You know, we do a lot of business with Penske. In fact, we know them very well. We're one of their primary lenders. So when Penske takes one of their fleet vehicles out of their rental fleet and they sell it in the open market, we are one of the primary lenders that'll come in and finance it for that buyer.
Awesome.
So they're a big account for us. We do the same thing for Enterprise, and we do the same thing for Schneider. No, you don't know Schneider until you think of a big orange truck. They only have about 18,000 of them going up and down the roads. We do the same thing for that. So those are differentiators for us. We call it channel development. You and I are going to get into it because you know exactly how to build a business and a sales force. But it's Lisa, when I was doing my prep for the show, there are so many accomplishments that you've had that I'm literally going to ask people to go to lisacopeland.com to be able to get their hands on the laundry list of accomplishments that you've had. And I don't want to shortchange them. I want to get into them, but I was blown away by how many things you have achieved at and how certain twists and turns in your life have positioned you in that, and really how timing has played a factor in your success. And so I really would like to get into it right away with the show of, do you really recognize that timing has played a role in your success, or do you characterize it all as hard work, preparation, a little bit of timing meets success?
Well, great. Thank you for that. First of all, I'm going to say that the older you get, it's easier to have a long laundry list of stuff you've done.
For some, not for others.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to say part of it is just age, and the rest of it, absolutely. You know, I believe that business success is a lot of things, but timing and luck are two of the major factors. There is no doubt about it in my mind.
So one of your big pops, your big financial pop, your big sort of exposure pop, one of the highlights of your career was when you became the managing partner and general manager rather, of what became the #1 Fiat dealership in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was 2012, correct?
Actually, we launched in February of 2011.
2011. And my point being that something happened in which you had foresight that said this little cute Fiat that's making a resurgence back to America is going to hit, and I want to be a part of it. Or was it a complete fluke?
Well, I don't know that I had that much foresight. I was a consultant for an auto dealer here in town, and I was on a 1-year consulting contract. He had just bought back his dealerships, and I was writing sales strategy for these 3 Chrysler stores that he owned. And then he got a call from Detroit. This was in 2010. And they said, we want to invite the top 300 Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram dealers up to Detroit. And we want to show you something that we want to relaunch this car to the United States. So he took me to Detroit so I could look at the business plan. And you have to remember, we were coming out of very trying times in the automotive industry in 2010. We just survived 2008, 2009. Chrysler was still in bankruptcy. At that point, it was still the Chrysler Corporation, not FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, which the president, unfortunately, the other night got it wrong on the State of the Union. He just kept saying the Chrysler Corporation, and I was texting my friends, and no, it's FCA. Someone has to tell his intern to rewrite his speech. So it was still the Chrysler Corporation. And, so we were introduced to this little car. And they said, you guys will have a blank slate. If you're chosen as a dealer, you'll have a blank slate to do whatever you want to do, because we want to change the face of the automotive industry. So the gentleman I was working with at the time, he reassigned me from doing the sales strategy for the other stores, and he gave me a $50,000 budget and about 6 weeks. And he said, go at it. And because, we had to do everything. Like, I had to write sales strategy. I went to a high-end shopping center here in Austin, and I started imagining, it's all about curiosity and imagination. What if, because what I started to look at is what is keeping consumers from buying cars today? Number one, they hate the experience.
Right.
And it's 2018 and they still hate the experience. Number two, car dealerships, a lot of times, they're out of the way, they're in these big whatever. So why not take it to the streets? When you look at this little car, it is a car for the creative class. Well, this was a high-end aspirational shopping center in Austin that had an entire community built in it and around it. So, it was just crazy. And then I had read the book, Zappos book, Delivering Happiness. So as I was doing all of my prep, and this is one of my funnier stories, I went to this gentleman and I said, okay, I've got this great idea and this is what I want to put into the proposal. Now you have to understand, I was a fashion major in college. So
in Dallas.
He said, what? And I said, I read this book about Zappos and this high-end shopping center, and I think that people will buy the car in the shopping center, and I want to build a runway down the middle of the shopping center because I want the delivery of the car to be the finale, which is the best part of the fashion show. Anyways, I'm just going on and on about it. And he looks at me and he said, so wait a minute, back up. You are like, you read a book about shoes and you want to put a car dealership in a shopping center. And I said, yep. And he looked at me and he said, it better work.
But you knew it was going to work. Well,
I didn't know. I had this gut feeling, it was a big roll of the dice.
Hindsight's 20/20, but when you hear it described the way you describe it, with the demographic of that part of Austin and the launch of the car, it just,
and it also helped that gas was $5 a gallon.
Sure, it
back
did.
then.
Yeah. That was big.
So, we had a lot of stuff playing in our favor, but you have to remember what was playing against us is that the Fiat left the country as Fix It Again Tony. And it was a disaster of a brand. Mm-hmm. And, and people, for the first week, we only sold like one car. And people would come in, they were coming in droves. And I was like, oh, great. And I remember calling him one night and saying, what's going on here? I have heard every Fiat story known to man. I've heard about their honeymoon, their college car, it rusting out, but nobody's buying a car.
Yeah.
So it was a little scary in the beginning. There were some sleepless nights for sure.
No question about it. But it's one of those amazing stories where things really began to play to your favor based on the risk that you took. And, I think that's one way to have success. And that's why I'm so intrigued by it, because when I look back at my success, 23 years in business, there has been none of that. And I wonder whether or not it's the market I chose, I call it the platform, or it's really my interpretation of risk, because I'm a grinder. And, I beat this place to a stick to $100 million a year with a stick. And, I just wonder if it could have been easier for me. And don't for one second, don't let me discount the success that you had, but clearly unique timing played in. And I'm saying to myself, every day I wake up, I'm like, am I going to get my break today? Am I going to get my break today?
Well, at $100 million a year, I think that you're doing okay.
Yeah, but I'm still looking for my break. I'm like, when's it going to get easier? When is some market condition going to happen in which we get all of Penske's business, right? Or all of Enterprise's business? When do I get my break?
Well, I'll give you a little secret. You need to get into the business of financing autonomous trucks. Because
we're good. We're down with that.
It's coming, and it is coming like a freight train. And I do a lot in the automotive industry still. I've got my automotive journalist credentials now. In fact, I'll be going in with the film crew covering the Chicago Auto Show
Killer
next week. Yeah, after Penske, and I'm excited about it because the consumers, they don't realize what's coming, and so I think for people like you and like me, it's getting ahead of the disruption. It is being the disruptor versus waiting to jump on the disruption train. Like you got to be the disruptor.
Yes,
And
you do. And unfortunately, a lot of times the disruptors aren't exactly clear on what they're disrupting or that they're even disrupting it. They're just doing their thing, right?
they're just doing their thing.
And,
Yep.
and that's what kind of brings me to the next phase of your development, because when I did my research on you, obviously you grew up in Dallas. I got the feeling, if I may be frank about it, that you had a normal, reasonable, happy childhood. Is that
I
fair
did.
to say?
That's very fair to say.
Well, it sounds like loving parents, father
Yep.
supported you, gave
Yep.
you a lot of direction and pointed you in the right way, and then obviously he gave you this tough love moment where you crashed your car with that insurance.
Now, is all this on Google?
It's all on YouTube. It's all on YouTube. Okay.
There is no hiding from your childhood.
I do my research because I want to get to know what we're talking about here, and I want to really understand the person, because I do this. Listen, you and I both know there ain't no money in podcasts. I'm doing this for enjoyment.
Money.
And for me to learn, right? If I don't enjoy my guests, I don't want to do the podcast.
Right.
And so it's been a wonderfully freeing thing for me to meet wonderful people. So let's go back. I mean, you grew up in Dallas. What was the conversation at the dinner table? What were your parents and you and your siblings talking about?
Well, so I actually grew up in Northern California
Oh,
in Silicon Valley. Now, I got to Dallas my junior year of high school.
no kidding.
Yeah. And so my father, he's deceased now, but he was an entrepreneur, and he was a very successful one. In we owned factories in Bulgaria where he manufactured 8-track tape, right? Cassette tapes, and then onto videotapes. He sold his company at about 45 years old and retired.
Wow.
And then at that point we moved to Texas. And so I grew up with watching great success from my dad, who didn't even finish college. He grew up very poor, went into the Navy at 17, got a GED, all of that. But he had that drive, that American dream. And he was a no excuse kind of guy. My mom went back and got her PhD.
Wow.
Later in life. And so she's a success in her own right. And so I looked at two very successful parents who did not have an easy road to hoe, but they never made excuses. They just got it done. And I think that that's what was modeled for me growing up. And they were tough. I mean, they were very tough. My dad especially, he held me to a pretty high standard.
Standard of what? Standard of academics, standard of athletics, standard of what?
No, because I wasn't great in school. I could have been. I didn't want to apply myself. So that was never it. But just great standards of
Character.
kid, what is it going to be when you grow up? What kind of company are you going to own? What is it you're going to do? He was never worried about the here and the now. When I was 16, he was worried about what I was going to do 10 years from now.
What did he want you to do?
Be an entrepreneur.
He did.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so that journey, though, was really put on hold after you got married and had children, right? You said, I'm going to raise these children, and I'm going to get back to that entrepreneurial movement down the road. Yes?
Sort of. So I was in the car business when I had kids, and my son almost died at 2 years old, choked on an earring of mine. I was in the shower. I'll never forget. It was Thanksgiving Day. And if we were not there, because we had a live-in at the time, if we were not there that day, my son would have died. There is no way that the nanny would have known how to pull the earring out of his throat because it was caught. Anyways.
Oh my God.
And I really saw that as a sign from above. So my son is 26 now. So that was 24 years ago. And because I had such a heavy background in automotive and automotive finance, a good friend of mine in Dallas, in fact, at the time he ran Flagstar Bank, he said, Lisa, you can't just drop out of the game. I understand, whatever. He said, but you've got such a heavy finance background. So he said, you need to go in the mortgage business. And I did. And within 1 year, and I did very well, within 1 year, I was the production manager for North American Mortgage with the highest production in Texas. And a year later, I started my own mortgage company, Austin Mortgage Associates, which is still in business today. My husband runs it. And during the glory years, we were pumping when I was there. We were pumping out $100 million a year in residential mortgages, sitting here in Austin, Texas, and the company still does really well today. And so I've got a very heavy financial background because I saw the opportunity. I saw it in the automotive industry when I was a finance director, and then of course into the mortgage business, the ability to buy and sell money. And I got very, very enamored with it.
Yeah, it's just an arbitrage. It's actually, an unending commodity. I'm in that business, and when I hire a new guy, I say to him, because they always want to figure out the technicalities, I said, listen, man, here's your technical knowledge. You sell money.
Sell money.
That's it. Go
Sell
find
spread.
people who need it. That's all you do is you borrow low and we sell high, and we try to make as much of the spread as possible and keep our fingers crossed that they pay us back. That's your job. Don't worry about the other stuff. We got all the other departments. I got marketing, I got IT, I got operations, I got accounting. Your job is to go sell money. So stop making it too complicated.
Exactly. And, and I think what I learned at a young age about selling money is that you're selling a commodity, right? So then from there, I opened up an insurance company because I thought, well, I'm doing all this mortgage business. I should have an insurance company.
Yeah.
Because I had all my processors sending out. And so I did. I opened up Lisa Copeland Insurance Agency. It was a Farmers branch. And then I went and I got my securities licenses, my 6 and 63, because through Farmers, I could do annuities and things like that. I wanted to be that one-stop shop for our customers. Now, I realized later that that's not always the best thing to do, because if one market goes south, then they're mad at you on the other two markets. So I don't recommend that to anybody. But at the time, I was pretty ambitious. I was about 32 years old, and nothing was going to stop me.
Right.
But it's so interesting. But if you can sell a commodity, that means you can sell a skirt, a pencil, a car, insurance, financial services. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. So we got to get in the people business is really what it does come down to, because so many things are commoditized these days.
Everything.
And pretty much everything is commoditized these days.
Yeah.
And so
what is your market differentiator?
Right.
What is it? Why are they going to do business with you or me versus the guy or gal down the street? Because the pricing's never going to be it, right? And so one of the things I talk about when I go speak, I said, there are two kinds of salespeople. There's the ones that are liked and the ones that are trusted. The ones that are liked have very skinny children because they are a commodity.
Yep.
The ones that are trusted, price is never an issue.
Yeah, right. Because that does end up in a commodity-based product environment. Why does one customer pay more? And if you want to look at the money piece, why does someone pay us 1 or 2 percentage points more than they could over at Wells Fargo? And
trusted advisor.
It comes down to the trust and the expertise, the problems that we solve, and the recommendations that we make that the customer didn't know themselves.
Right.
That is why they're willing to pay more. And yes, unfortunately, in a commoditized business, you're going to get kicked in the gut sometimes, because you're going to do all that stuff and treat them wonderful, and they're still going to go with Wells when it comes down to the nut cutting for $40 a month less on a big rig. And guess what? Welcome to the world of selling. That's how it plays out.
And that's part of it. But I found, and I've lost a lot of deals in life, but I can tell you a lot of them have also come back.
Of course.
Because, to your point, they went with Wells or B of A or whoever, and it was a disaster. And then when it came time that they had a problem, all they had was a 1-800 number versus a trusted advisor.
Yep. Look, I'm glad you brought up your husband, because your husband must be one hell of a good-looking dude. If you chose this guy, why do I pronounce it? Marchioni, the head of FIAT? Is it Marconi, Marchioni?
Sergio Marchioni is the chairman of the board
Good.
of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Ferrari, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo, and Fiat in Italy.
So you chose the opportunity to meet that guy over the opportunity to meet Clooney. And the only thing I say in that is that your husband must be one handsome dude.
Yes, he is. Well, I'll tell you, the reason I made the bet, is because I wanted to meet Mr. Marchioni. And I think there's a moment in time in our careers where you think, who is that one person that I could meet that will change the trajectory of my career? And I knew that if I could get to Marchioni, that would happen. Well, the CEO of Fiat at the time, Tim Kuniskis, who's now the head of all of Dodge and Viper and SRT and all that, he and I made a bet one night, and I said to him, I want to meet Sergio. I mean, he's the head of Fiat brand. Fiat had not yet bought Chrysler Corporation, but he was chairman of all of these brands I just mentioned. And Kuniskis said the only way you're going to meet him is to break the world sales record. I said, what's the number? And he had to call me back the next day, and he said, you'll have to deliver 100 hatchbacks in 30 days. And
that's the Fiat 500.
Mm-hmm, yeah, the little one. And I said, okay. And he's like, and I said, so if we do that, if my team does that, I will meet Sergio. And he said, yes. So long story short, month 1, we did not hit. Month 2, we did hit. And when I called Kuniskis to tell him that Sergio needs to gas up the G5, he's coming to Texas. He said, oh my God, I have not told Mr. Marchioni this. Like, Lisa, you know who Sergio Marchioni is. He's the most powerful man in the world. I said, I don't care. We had a bet. And so then Chrysler PR went into this crazy overtime. And so finally, they called me back and they said, hey, Marchione does our commercials in Italy. Tim did. And, we're going to send you to Italy. And I'm like, okay, first of all, Kaniskis, that's never going to fly at my house. Number two, I made the bet to meet Marchione. So it was so cute. Sergio, they did tell him, and he came to my dealership. And so he and I had a private meeting. And so he walked in ahead of time, and he's this Italian guy. And he's just, he's the man. He single-handedly saved the US auto industry. And he looked at me and he said, Lisa, is it true that you chose me over George Clooney? That's a true story.
That is so awesome.
So you tell an Italian man that he was chosen over George Clooney, who happens to be the chairman of the board of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Ferrari, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo. You just changed your life.
Look, I care about big takeaways for the audience. I think there's so many in that story, right? Number one is
you have to ask.
You have to
have guts. You got to figure out who it is you want to meet in life, and then you got to go get it done.
And you got to pick a number. So many people don't pick the right numbers. We pick numbers that are too doggone small, right? I mean, you could have said, well, we can only do 20. We can only do 30, but somebody threw out 100. The problem is most
100 broke the world sales record.
So that you picked that number.
Yeah.
And what we do, Lisa, as you know, is most people will climb the hill. They just climb hills that are too damn small. And It's because we don't really have the vision or the foresight to see how big of the hill we're capable of doing. So the other takeaway in that, which is something that you and I experience, especially in our podcast or our speaking environments, is we pick too damn low on the food chain. You could have stopped at this guy, Tim, and you could have said, well, that's about as high as I could go. It's the same thing that happened.
I knew him. Boring.
Right. But there's a whole other ecosystem there, too, that we should probably talk about to help our audience understand what we're talking about here. Because then the bubble kind of bursts when you meet Marchione. It's a little bit like, well, now who's next? Who? I already met the top dog. Now where do I go from here?
I will tell you, because of that, that changed my life. And because of that, I was named in 2016 by Automotive News, one of the top 100 women in automotive. And I was at the big ceremony there of us, the top 100. I was sitting right next to Elena Ford, Henry Ford's granddaughter. And this woman walks down the aisle, and it was Mary Barra, the chairman of the board of General Motors. And so I stopped her and I said, you are absolutely the most aspirational woman in the world. And wow. And I can't believe that we're like sorority sisters now. And I said, I'd love to take my picture with you. And she goes, absolutely. Congratulations on your award. And I told her who I was. And she's like, you're the Fiat girl. I was like, yeah, the Fiat woman. I said, oh yeah. And she said, well, can I put my lipstick on first? And I said, absolutely. So if you go to lisacopeland.com, you will see myself and Mary Barra with at the top 100 women. So, I still got to climb, because let's see, we broke the record in 2012, I believe June of 2012. And in 2016, we were still celebrating it. And so I got to meet Mary Barra and sit next to Elena Ford for 3 hours while he ran through all of our resumes. And so anyways, it's just like I said, it's a moment in time that it was worth the risk.
Yeah, no question about it. You've had a series of those, Lisa. Your life has been filled with a lot of different successes. Talk to me about
lots of failures, though.
Yeah, and I need to go there. You know it. We work with Hank. We got to go there to get there. Give me one of the low moments. We've already talked about this unbelievably scary moment with your son, but what was one of the lowest moments? The one where you just simply had to rely on grit and fortitude and just Lisa's own individual toughness.
Yeah. So, God, they're probably get mad at me at Chrysler, but just like you said, Hank says to tell the truth. So incredible highs in 2012 with the Fiat brand. 2013, we started launching new cars, and in 14, including the Alfa Romeo. So we were the number one Alfa Romeo store in the country, also under my leadership. And so then all of a sudden, Fiat start having a lot of problems, and it hits the press. They start getting ranked the worst car in the world, and all the other stuff. Our cars went on stop sell because of the airbags and some other things. Chrysler was kind of wrapped up with NHTSA, which is the National Safety or National Transportation and Safety, and they were fighting with them on some other stuff. So they were really putting it hard on Fiat. In the meantime, I had to move buildings. I had to move out of that aspirational shopping center because I had to build a service department. So we moved out to an $8 million building. In a traditional car setting. And I actually write about this in my book. And everything started going south because see, my original gut was right. That Fiat buyer was that shopping center, was the creative class, was the people, the people that would stand in line all night at Apple Computer.
Yeah.
And now, and including my sales team, they were young millennials, a lot of females. And now when I bring them to a traditional setting, none of, I lost my salespeople, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Our customers didn't like it. Fiat brand was in trouble. And I looked up and, I went from a rent factor of about $10,000 a month to about $42,000 a month.
Yeah. But you're not just GM here. You're managing partner as well.
I
so
am,
you
yeah,
got real skin in the
game. I own 25% of the store.
Yes.
Yeah. And, and talk about sleepless nights. And, and there were monies. There was months that we lost money and, I couldn't see the forest through the trees. And it was tough. And that's when you have to dig in with everything you've got. And so that was probably, people love to talk about the successes in the automotive industry. And I said, guys, I can think of 6 great days in 7 years that I'm like, woo-hoo. This is all
That's
work.
Awesome.
And then the rest of it, it's sleepless nights and trying to figure out how I'm going to, help save this brand. And then so Mr. Marchione was, after he visited, I was put on the National Dealer Council for Chrysler, for Fiat Chrysler automobiles. And so I got to spend every 90 days in Detroit for 4.5 years solving problems, not only for Fiat brand, but for the Chrysler dealers that we represented, which was about 2,500, I believe. And, so it was like I was a deacon in the dirtiest church in the world and trying to save my own ship because I was forced to move into this $8 million building because I had to have fixed operations. I had to have a service department. I mean, by the time we moved in there, I think we had sold about 2,300 cars.
Yeah.
And so what had happened was they were being serviced out of my Chrysler, not my Chrysler dealership, but my partner's Chrysler dealership. And the service was terrible. Yeah. And so, because that Fiat customer does not want that Chrysler service, because what we had sold was that we
were cool.
High touch.
We were different.
Yeah, we were different. And it was a disaster. So like I said, out of 6 or 7 years, I had 6 great days and the rest of them were really tough. And I think that's when you learn what you're made of.
I appreciate you saying that honesty because, I was talking to my friend, Ed Milet, who's a super, super uber successful guy. And we were both joking about the fact that most of the time, 90% of the time, we are fairly disgruntled, right?
Yeah.
We're disgruntled at the office. Sometimes we're disgruntled at home. We're just always so consumed about getting to the next level that we're only really bliss 10% of the time. And we both joked about the fact that because of that disgruntledness for 90% of the time, your 7 days of happiness, you really remember those 7 days. I relish the 10% of happiness so much more because of the 90% of sort of just disgruntled. I call it a constant state of pissed offness. I'm just always a little on edge.
And for me, I don't even think I was like, it was constant survival. It was constantly having to move to the right, move to the left. Yep. What are we going to do? At one point, both of my SUVs, we had 2 SUVs that had come out back to back. They were both not only on recall. I mean, recalls, that's okay. You just fix a part and you start selling. They were on stop sell. Yeah. The National Transportation Institute put them on stop sell, meaning we could not sell a car. Well, so imagine taking out about 70% of your revenue for your dealership.
Sure. The originations went away, right?
God,
the front side went away.
Unbelievable. And then the bad press that went on top of that, because when a car goes on stop sell, it's
who's
all
buying that?
Yeah.
Right. But also you were counting your money in 2012 and 2013. There was a time where you said, wait a minute, 25% of this equals this.
It was good.
And in 2014, 15,
I gave it all back. It was like a great 2 years. It's like, hey, thank you so much for letting me borrow this money. Now I'm going to give it back to you in 14 and 15.
Listen, King, it's a massive lesson for the audience that because you had some diversification as well, though. It wasn't, you had other streams of income that assisted. But let's bring it to how it came full circle for you, because really your legacy, where you're moving, is almost this entirely new chapter that embraces all of this other stuff. Right. But it really begins to package under this quote, which is on your homepage, which is, do you believe what you do matters?
Right.
And I can remember, now I had a pretty challenging childhood in that my old man split when I was 6 months old. I never saw him again. Had an adopted dad who was pretty rough. But my old man used to say, my adopted dad used to say, when you hand your business card to somebody at a cocktail party, it matters what's on that business card. And I never forgot it. And I say it a lot. And then when I saw that quote, you're asking it as a question. My answer is, you damn right it matters what you do. What is your answer?
You know, to me, it's so profound because when I go and I work with organizations, and what I see so many times is that they're really top heavy when it comes to, you know, the C-suite has bought into their own, you know, whatever, their own press. And that middle level and lower level, they're the ones who seem to be discouraged and they seem to have the high turn rates. And so when I get in there, you know, and when I'm talking to the leaders within these companies and these organizations, I say, you know, I'll ask them, does the receptionist believe that what she does matters? And it's always like blank stare. And I said, because, you know, that is the initial touch point, most likely for most companies. And if she's not bought into the fact that she is the most critical person in your organization because she's the first touch point within your organization, then you don't need me because you have more problems than you know what to do with. And so that's what I really work through from a culture standpoint, is to make the leaders understand and then help them make their lower, you know, I shouldn't say lower, their
entry level, frontline.
Yeah, frontline employees understand that what they do matters. And once people and employees can get their mind around the fact, you know, I just keynoted the National Shoe Retailers Conference. So it was all shoe retailers from around the country. It was in Memphis, probably, I don't know, a month ago. And as I was talking to those retailers, I said, you know, I understand with everything that's going on in the markets, right, with Amazon and all the disruptors, you know, but, you know, because they were talking about, you know, how do we do more? How do we do more? And I said, you know, does the person who the shipping in your shipping department, do they understand that what they do matters? Do they know that if they can get the shoes checked in a timely manner, get them on the shelf, get them merchandised, you know, get the returns processed, whatever that is, that they are one of the most critical pieces? Because what they were talking about was high turnover. And I said, it's because your people don't believe that what they do matters.
And that had to have been put to the test, Lisa, when you were running the Fiat store with the millennials in this unique environment here. I mean, I've watched a couple of the videos. I see the staff. The staff was all, for the most part, under 30, completely the anti-stereotypical car salesperson, right?
Right.
So you began to develop this mindset, I'm assuming, because that was how you had to connect with that staff. They're not the same mindset.
No, and to this level. So, you know, the reason I wanted to, you know, after I'd written, you know, the proposals and, you know, I had a team that worked on it with me, but, you know, my piece to it was the sales strategy, the facilities, the overarching strategy for the Fiat brand. And, you know, and I wanted to hire the anti-car salespeople. So I hired all these young kids. And, you know, my thing was never to be a car dealer. That's why when I had the opportunity to sell, I sold. Mine was to revolutionize the auto industry. It was to come back in with a fresh set of eyes and to be able to show an industry that has just been on their butt for 3 years, that women, minorities, and millennials have what it takes to pull this industry back around. Because the number one problem with the industry wasn't even so much, in my personal opinion, the economy, but it was the fatigue of the consumer. And that's proved by the NADA statistics of, at that time, you know, there was pent-up demand of 12 years, meaning the average consumer in America owned their car for 12 years. Who owns their car for 12 years, right? And that's the reason that the industry kind of exploded in 2012, 13, and 14, because finally those cars really were ready to hit the graveyard and people had to start buying again. But people don't hold on to their cars that long because they have to. They hold on to them because they hate the experience.
Right.
So I say that to say this young team was bought into the fact that they were going to revolutionize the auto industry. And when we broke the world sales record, you know, I told them, I said, this is something, ladies and gentlemen, nobody can ever take away from you guys. You get to write on your resume that you were part of the team that broke the world sales record. And the other interesting takeaway from this millennial team, I had 2 different pay plans. They could be on solid commission, or they could be on a salary plus a per car. And in the car business, you know, you measure your what we call is comp. It's by a percentage, which I'm sure you understand that very well. And you never wanted your comp to go over about 25%.
Yeah.
So and my guys were high producers. Most of them were selling 15 to 25 cars a month. And so they all chose, except for one, to be on the
base
salary plus per car.
Amazing.
Which dropped my comp to 19%. And I would sit down with them because that was like, I was like mama bear. So I wanted to make sure. And I said, now I want you to understand, if you would switch pay plans,
you're
you
leaving money on the table.
$2,000 more this month. And they're like, no. Because Lisa, we're revolutionizing the auto industry.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah. So
Lisa,
God bless the millennials is all I've got to say, but they've got to be inspired. Like there has to be social impact, which we had a huge social impact at FIAT Austin. And then there has to be security, which they knew if, month in, if they sold this many cars, they'd make $4,000 a month. That's great. It's more they would have made out of college. And they're all purpose driven because what they do matters.
Well, they also probably need to know that someone's looking out for them. Someone reached out, took them under their wing, and said, "Hey, we're walking this road together. You're not in the deep end kicking, and nobody's helping you." I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Rick Sapio. He has an amazing TEDx talk. His name is Rick Sapio, where he talks about the importance of a catalyzing statement in any company, which is really this far-reaching. What the hell do you stand for? Right?
It isn't what you sell, it's what you stand for.
What is it that you stand for? He refers to it as his catalyzing statement, this big sort of moonshot, right? And he uses an example with Volvo. When Volvo said, we're going to build the safest car in the world, guess what happened to Volvo's hiring problem? It went away. They started to recruit the most unbelievable engineers who said, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to build the safest car in the world. I'm down with that.
Building a movement. The movement was the safest car in the world. And who would not want to be on that wagon? Right.
So let's move to that as we come to the close of the podcast today. The selling of a movement is your legacy. This will be the next chapter in your life that really becomes your exclamation point of who Lisa Copeland is. I believe that, don't you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I believe it. For years in the automotive industry, it's, I was quoted in the press. It isn't what you sell, it's what you stand for. And if you stand for something big enough, people are going to buy what you're selling. And people did business with us and they bought cars because they loved these young millennials who because I taught them how to tell a story.
Yep.
And to tell our story. And they loved these kids and they were rooting for them and they were rooting for us. And the night that we were trying to break the world sales record, we were at sales close. And
why? It came down to the wire? All the way down?
Oh my God, yes. We actually closed at 109 cars, but it was hairy. Like, I put together a 19 car deal and all kinds of stuff. But it got down to, I saw our clients. Now, again, we're a car dealership, and we went to our clients, deals that we had been working for months, and we told our story. We're trying to break the world sales record. We're trying to do this. It's going to be a moment in time. And I saw clients come around us, rally, and buy cars because they were rooting for us. Yeah. They wanted us to do it to the point where I had a lady call me 2 days later, and she's like, I don't even know why I bought this car. She's like, but I was so wrapped up in you guys doing this, I bought the car.
That's so awesome.
True story.
So let's talk about key takeaways for the audience in building this sales team. Give me 2 or 3 things that, number one, you did that worked timelessly, and 1 or 2 things that you see constantly when you're working with these big groups. This mistake that is just redundant over and over and over.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I had 7 great days and 6 years of hell. And so in the beginning, the vision was so, the higher purpose was there. It isn't what you sell, it's what you stand for. Because I knew it was going to be a tough road relaunching this FIAT brand to America because of the way it left. And you have to hire people. So first of all, the leader has to have that definiteness of purpose. Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, but you have to have that definiteness of purpose in the leadership or at the top. And then you have to be able to sell it as the leader. And you have to have a level of hiring that you may not hire the best and the brightest all the time. You have to hire people that are bought into the movement, that are bought into the purpose or the passion of the organization. So where I see that organizations fail is that they look at a resume and they're like, oh yeah, checked all these boxes. But what's missing is that definiteness of purpose, that thing that makes you stick during the tough days, because I don't care what kind of business you have, there are rough, tough days. And if you don't have that definiteness of purpose, if you don't truly believe that what you do matters, you're going to bolt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your sales team will bolt because there will be the next green pasture across the street, around the corner, whatever it may be. You know, I used to panic during the tough times when we were on stop sell. I'd walk through the showroom and I'd see my sales team on LinkedIn, and I thought, oh God, they're looking for jobs, right? So people have access to information.
Oh, of course.
And if they're not bought in, not going to work.
Yeah, the entire employee-employer relationship is changing. It's changing and never going to return back to what it is. The employer has the responsibility to deliver what we're talking about today, and the employee has the ultimate choice to do it or don't. And that's changing the game face of this relationship. I love the way Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, says it. LinkedIn will only do 6 or 12-month employment contracts because he believes that's all they can get from both the company or the employee. The employer or the employee can only commit at 110% for 6 to 12 months. So they say, here's what we're going to do for 6 months. Sound good to you? Sounds good to me. At the end of 6 months, how'd we do? Yeah, we did pretty good. You want to try it for another 6 months? Yeah, let's do it for another 6 months. No false positives, no ridiculousness of you're going to be a lifer and we're just going to keep our fingers crossed that you're 6 to 12 months employment contracts max. I love that.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, I love that.
I almost agree with that because to your point, I don't think there are lifers anymore, and there is not in the millennial crowd. We know that their average job span's 2 years.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be lifers unless there is something just magical about the organization. And the only way you can find the magic of your organization is when you're interviewing at other organizations.
Yeah, the only lifers I know anymore is Congress.
or old school guys in the car business. There's a bunch of lifers there too. Lisa, what a pleasure to meet you. I can't wait for you to come to Dallas. You see the phone booth behind me here?
I do.
So I have my guests. If we did this episode in my studio, you would sign that booth. That booth is a legacy item for me. It will remind me of all the wonderful people I've met through doing this podcast. But it also reminds me of 2 things. Could you imagine, and yes, you don't have to imagine, you did it just like I did, putting dimes in that phone booth and having to make
yes,
phone calls?
I did it.
Right? Of course.
Yes.
And then now we can look at it, and I look at it every time I'm in here, and I say, look at how obsolete that is. Totally gone, completely useless, nothing but where I put signatures on it. It has no functional use in the globe anymore. And it keeps me on my toes, man. It keeps me moving fast because you don't know. We don't know when 2 planes are going to hit skyscrapers. We don't know when regulation is going to change for us. We need to be on it all the time.
Got to be on it all the time. I agree. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it fully, and I'll see you down the road, Lisa. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's our episode this week with your host, Matt Manero. Check us out every Friday at 12 p.m. Central as we discuss money, your life, and how you need more money.